everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, my arm is moving because I'm petting my dog Jackson because he's being very needy. Also, there's like little fuzzies flying around because he just jumped off of my dress shirt thing and left little fuzzies everywhere. So anyways, in today's video, you guys are going to get to see my 3 African fat-tailed geckos, Oberon, Obella, and Jamie eating, and I'm going to be showing you all the different types of foods that I feed them. Before we get started, I ask that you please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Also, please consider supporting us on Patreon or by becoming a channel member. We would love to have you. I also ask that you check out the feeder insect playlist that I will include on screen and down below. That playlist will teach you about all the different insects that I'm going to go over in this video in greater detail. It will include their nutrient levels. It'll include how to keep them, how to feed them, how to breed them, anything that might be good or bad about them for your reptiles. So make sure you check that out if you have any questions about the feeders that I mention and showcase in this video. But with all that said, let's go ahead and get started. So firstly, I want to start with my favorite feeder insect for my African fat-tailed geckos, which are Dubia roaches. Dubia roaches are a great source of protein and they are not high in fat. They're soft-bodied, therefore easy to digest, and they come in a variety of sizes, which is great because Jamie, my African fat-tailed gecko you'll see on screen here in a second, is smaller than my other 2, Oberon and Obella. Because Jamie is just built different, it's really important when I get feeder insects that there is a variety of sizes. So briefly, I want to discuss calcium to phosphorus ratio because I will mention it a few times in this video, and if you don't know what it is, you won't know what I'm talking about. If a feeder insect has too much phosphorus and not enough calcium, we call that a negative ratio, and if there is more calcium than phosphorus, we call this a positive ratio. Because phosphorus inhibits the absorption of calcium in our reptiles, we want there to be more calcium than phosphorus. To make up for the deficit in a lot of feeder insects, we dust them with calcium. So in Dubia roaches, their calcium to phosphorus ratio is negative, so they need to be dusted with calcium to make up for that deficit. They do have a better ratio than other feeder insects. Not all insects are made the same, but a lot of them still have to be dusted in calcium because there's too much phosphorus, and we'll talk about that as we go through each feeder insect. Another great thing about Dubia roaches is that they are easy to gut load really quick. Gut loading is the process by which we offer nutritious foods to our feeder insects 24 hours before offering them to our reptiles. That way they can get the most out of their food. You want to gut load with healthy vegetables and occasionally fruits, and you don't want to gut load with things that are really high in protein like chicken or dog food. Because Dubia roaches are great eaters, they are really easy to gut load. They're also really easy to breed and keep, and if you're not interested in breeding them, they're readily available for purchase, which is super convenient, but that's only if they're legal in your location. That's the only downside to Dubia roaches, is that they are illegal in some places. Another great thing about Dubia roaches is that my geckos have a great feeding response to them. One thing I recommend is offering Dubia roaches out of a ceramic or smooth-sided bowl that they can't escape from, or offering them on tongs, as they are very quick, and if you just free feed them in the enclosure, they will find a way to hide, and then you'll just be having roaches cohabitating with your reptiles instead of your reptiles actually eating them. Now, this isn't always going to be the case. I'm sure there's some people who have success feeding Dubia roaches this way, but I recommend, so you can make sure that your animal is eating, offering them on tongs or in a bowl that they cannot escape from. Next up are hornworms. Hornworms are a great source of calcium as they have a positive to calcium phosphorus ratio, so you don't need to dust them. They are also a great source of moisture, and due to that and their soft bodies, they're easy to digest. Unfortunately, they are not a good source of protein, so they cannot be a staple feeder, but they are great as part of a varied diet. Hornworms can be expensive and they can even be illegal or hard to find in some places, but caring for them is easy as they are gut loaded with the food that comes in the container with them, so they're really easy to take care of. Hornworms often come small but grow quickly, so be sure not to get too many and be sure to use them when they're an appropriate size, as they can get really big, way too big for African fat-tailed geckos. My geckos have a fantastic feeding response to hornworms, so I really recommend including them as part of a varied diet for your gecko. Superworms are also readily accepted by my geckos. They're a decent source of protein, but they also have a bit of fat, so if you're looking for both, they're a good option. They come in different sizes, which again is beneficial due to my wee guy Jamie, who you see here on screen. Superworms are easy to keep and gut load, and they're readily available to purchase. Superworms have to be dusted with calcium due to their negative calcium to phosphorus ratio. There's also a myth about superworms that they can eat your gecko from the inside out. If you're concerned, you can crush the head of the superworm, but I have never found this to be an issue in my 8 years of reptile keeping, and I've never heard of anyone actually having this issue. If you want to get your gecko some superworms, check the links in the description. Another feeder insect that has that strange myth about them are mealworms, and again, you can crush the head if you feel it necessary, but I have never found it to be an issue, and I've never heard of anyone having that issue. Mealworms are a decent feeder, though they're not the most nutritional. They're fine as part of a varied diet. Be sure to offer them with calcium, as they have a negative calcium to phosphorus ratio, and be sure to gut load them as well. I also recommend not feeding them with high frequency or in large amounts, as they are not as easy to digest as some of the other feeders on this list. Mealworms are readily available for purchase, and they're easy to breed. I breed my own mealworms just like I breed my own Dubia roaches, and if I can do it, you certainly can. It's very easy to do, but it just takes some time and some patience. So if you don't feel like doing that, you can always buy them, but they have that option available for you. Black soldier fly larvae are another feeder insect that, like mealworms, can be difficult to digest. But again, as long as you offer them as part of a varied diet and you offer them without too much frequency or like too much at one time, you'll be fine. I feed them to my geckos and they've never had an issue, but I wanted to preface that. They're a good source of protein and they are high in calcium. They have a positive calcium to phosphorus ratio and therefore do not need to be dusted, but as you see, I still dust mine just because, it doesn't hurt to have that extra calcium. Black soldier fly larvae are also easy to gut load, and due to their size, they can be fed to various sizes of gecko, which, as you know, I appreciate. The only thing about them is that some geckos can be picky when it comes to black soldier fly larvae. I have not noticed that to be the case with any of my African fat-tail geckos, but a couple of my leopard geckos are not very enthusiastic about them. Still, I have over 30 leopard geckos and the vast majority eat them, so I wouldn't say it's like an overall problem, but just something to keep in mind. If you want to get your geckos some black soldier fly larvae, I have a link down in the description that you should most definitely check out. And lastly, we have the waxworm, which is a high-fat feeder insect that should only be offered as a treat in a varied diet due to their low nutritional value and because of something called waxworm addiction or waxworm preference, which is where a gecko or reptile can neglect all other food options for waxworms alone because that is like the best tasting to them and it's really bad for their health. I'll leave a video about it on screen. Waxworms are super delicious and therefore elicit a great feeding response. You should only offer a few at a time, and normally when I get waxworms, I offer them with another insect, like I'll give them a hornworm and a couple waxworms just because I want them to be getting the most out of their meal if they're going to be getting a treat. Waxworms should be dusted in calcium, and they do not need to be gut loaded as they do not consume foods that would be nutritionally significant to your gecko. Plus, they're an occasional snack, so it's not really vital to, need to get the most out of them every time, as it is for the others on the list. One more thing I want to say about waxworms is that people often advertise them as being the insect of choice for a gecko that needs to put on weight quickly, like a gecko that is a rescue or a gecko that has gone through breeding season. And while I understand the preference for waxworms as a choice to put weight on your gecko, I just want to be very careful about the fact that waxworm preference is a very real thing that can happen to geckos. And also there are other fatty options that still offer protein and can be gut loaded and can be dusted like a superworm. So again, as part of a varied diet, these are fine. I just want to urge people not to overfeed waxworms because it's really bad for your gecko. There's one more thing I want to talk about, which is the fact that you don't see crickets on this list. And that is just because I think crickets are the scourge of the earth. I just really don't like crickets, so I don't keep them and I don't offer them as a feeder, and I feel fine doing that. But if you offer crickets, that's okay. They're just simply not my preference. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed seeing my African fat-tail geckos eating their variety of insects that they eat. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this informational and insightful. If you did, let me know by leaving a comment and a like. Also, please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and please consider supporting us on Patreon or by becoming a channel member. We would love to have you. And with all that said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye. And a special thank you from me, Benjamin, and the rest of the animals here at Jessica's Animal Friends to our patrons and channel members.